The first time my son ever called me crying, he was just a little boy who had lost his shoe at the county fair. The second time he was 29 years old, calling from a jail cell after being arrested because of his own father-in-law. That was the moment I realized that sometimes the strongest revenge is not loud anger. Sometimes it is quiet patience. My son Ethan has always been the kind of man who puts other people first. He worked hard, treated everyone with respect, and never expected praise for doing the right thing. Whether it was helping older co-workers, training new employees, or assisting elderly neighbors, he simply believed kindness was part of everyday life. As his father, I was proud of him, even if I often kept my distance because I believed giving him space was the best way to show love. A few years earlier, Ethan married a wonderful woman named Emily. Her father, Richard Parker, owned a successful trucking company and offered Ethan a management position. At first it seemed like an act of generosity, but I eventually learned that Richard was a man who liked control more than family. He was calm, polite, and calculated, never raising his voice, which made him even more dangerous. Everything changed one Tuesday evening when Ethan called me in tears. He told me he had been arrested for stealing nearly $4,000 from the company fuel account. I could barely believe what I was hearing because I knew my son would never steal from anyone. When I asked who reported him, Ethan quietly answered that Richard had personally called the police. As I gathered the facts, the situation became even more disturbing. Instead of asking Ethan for an explanation or reviewing the evidence carefully, Richard ordered his security manager to build a case against him. They relied on employee badge records that supposedly placed Ethan at the fuel depot during the theft. The problem was that Ethan had been attending a business meeting in another city that same afternoon, with several co-workers who could verify his location. When I called Richard, hoping there had been some terrible misunderstanding, he remained completely calm. He insisted the matter was simply business and claimed Ethan would have the opportunity to defend himself through the legal process. Before ending the conversation, he coldly told me that my son should have read his employment contract more carefully. His lack of concern hurt far more than shouting ever could. Thankfully, not everyone at the company stayed silent. A longtime office manager named Linda believed Ethan had been treated unfairly. While reviewing company records, she discovered the security badge system had been malfunctioning for days, creating false entries that could not be trusted. She quietly printed the maintenance reports and provided them to Ethan's attorney, giving us the first real evidence that the accusations were built on faulty information. Although I was furious, I refused to act out of emotion. Instead, I waited, gathered every fact, and remembered something no one else knew. More than a decade earlier, when Richard's trucking company had been on the edge of bankruptcy, I had quietly arranged financing through an investment company I controlled. Richard never knew I was the person who saved his business because my name never appeared on the paperwork. Buried deep inside that financing agreement was a clause stating that if the company caused serious legal or financial harm to an employee without proper board approval, the loan holder could take temporary operational control of the business. Richard had never paid attention to that section because he never imagined it would matter. I contacted my attorney and instructed him to confirm every detail before taking action. We followed the contract exactly as written. Meanwhile, the criminal case against Ethan began falling apart. His co-workers confirmed his alibi. The faulty badge records were submitted to prosecutors, and the evidence against him quickly unraveled. Soon, every charge against my son was dismissed because there was simply no proof he had committed any crime. Only after Ethan's name was completely cleared did I visit Richard's office with my attorney. I calmly explained who had actually financed his company years before and placed the original contract on his desk. As he read the agreement, I watched the confidence disappear from his face. The clause he had ignored for years had now been activated because of his own reckless actions. Following the terms of the agreement, company operations were placed under temporary review. The security manager responsible for fabricating evidence was dismissed, along with the executive who approved the accusations without conducting a proper investigation. My goal was never personal revenge. I simply wanted to ensure that no innocent employee would ever experience what my son had endured. For the first time since I had known him, Richard's voice cracked as he admitted Ethan was family. I quietly reminded him that Ethan had already been family when he ordered his arrest. This time, Richard had no response. In the months that followed, Ethan rebuilt his life with Emily. The loyal office manager who stood by the truth was finally promoted into the leadership position she had deserved for years. Richard remained with the company, but no longer controlled its daily operations. Eventually, he visited Ethan and Emily, offering a sincere apology. Guilt could never erase the damage, but it was a beginning. Looking back, I learned an important lesson. For years, I believed loving my son meant staying out of his life and letting him solve his own problems. I was wrong. Sometimes the greatest act of love is quietly stepping in when the people you care about cannot protect themselves. Justice does not always come through anger. Sometimes it comes through patience, preparation, and one forgotten paragraph in a contract that waits years for the right moment to matter.